I chose to attend a Zen meditation because I wanted to fully participate in whichever religion I chose, and going to a church or a temple and observing and simply listening to a service didn't interest me as much as fully participating in the meditation. To find out more about the practice, what I might need to bring or wear, and what to expect, I went to the Calgary Soto Zen website. This was very informative. I found information regarding Zen as a practice, what to expect at the service, and even directions. I emailed Murray, dressed appropriately, and asked questions when appropriate. I was very excited to go experience this new religion, and it happened to work out great. The week I went was extremely stressful, and I found the meditation very beneficial. I didn't really know what to expect when I got there, but the one thing that was really different from what I was expecting was the room itself. I was expecting a much bigger, more traditional room. I was also therefore expecting there to be a lot more people present taking part in the ceremony. But really it was just a much smaller room and only about 10 or 12 people. Other than that, I didn't really have many other expectations. Thanks to the website, I was able to easily find the multi-faith prayer room at the University of Calgary campus. However, without those directions, I believe it may have been difficult to find the room, as it is tucked away on the third floor in McEwen Hall, and is just a tiny little room with a maximum of 60 occupants. Even though I knew the room was on the university campus, I was expecting something more traditional, or with a more sacred feel, but it was really just like any other room in the school. That being said, this was a great example of how a profane area can temporarily be turned into a sacred place, where imaginary lines are drawn in order for various rituals to take place. Like I mentioned before, I was expecting there to be a lot more people than what there were. There were only 2 other females, one likely in her early 20s. She was quiet and kept to herself. The other was maybe in her 40s. She was friendly, helpful, and took part in some of the rituals and tea service. There were 5 or 6 males. One was Murray. He led the service. Another gentleman was obviously the fiancé of the elder lady. All of the men seemed knowledgeable, and though it was clear that Murray was the leader, he openly welcomed any insight, comments, or opinions from anyone else. Once the practice started, it was clear the room became a sacred place. From the very start, when we stepped in a certain way into the zendo, we were very strict ways of doing things. We walked to our spots, bowed first to the center of the room, then to our cushion. We then sat in our meditation pose, which 3 other newcomers and myself were taught earlier. Once everyone was seated, we heard the bell ring 3 times, and for the next 40 minutes we sat in complete silence. Before entering the zendo to practice meditation, incense were lit. This process also included multiple bows. For the 40 minutes of meditation, it felt like I was the only one in the entire room, surrounded by peacefulness and the sweet lingering smell of the incense, until of course somebody sneezed, which scared me half to death. But thankfully, immediately I returned to my state of mindfulness and peacefulness. Despite my earlier concern, the 40 minutes passed quite quickly. At the end of 40 minutes, we all fluffed our cushions and performed another series of bows, and then we started chanting. Once everyone was standing, we practiced chanting. The chant was the Pali formula for taking refuge. It is my understanding this is not a regular activity, and so I feel very lucky to have been a part of it. The chant was easy to follow, and when we were chanting, I was filled with a feeling that I might describe as proud or noble. And though it had very little sacred meaning to me personally, I felt as though I was a part of something very important. Once the chanting was over, we rearranged our cushions in a circle in front of the temple. As I mentioned before, the elderly lady served the tea. 2 very important things to note about the tea service is that it is done in complete silence, and that again, bowing and body language are essential. I also found it interesting that during the tea ceremony, everybody kept their position from meditation. Once the tea was served, Murray opened up discussion regarding the Pali formula for taking refuge. This was an open discussion, and anyone, including the first-time members and myself, were welcome to comment. Throughout the evening, there was very little conversation. I introduced myself, and then Murray gave instruction on proper meditation posture. And after that, there was little to no conversation, until the tea ceremony and discussion. Though it was a mostly silent night, it was not solemn, but rather peaceful and relaxing. The last discussion was after cleaning up. We bowed out and were wished safe travels. I did not find this to be an extremely religious event. It seemed more focused on mindfulness, living in the moment, and calmness. It also seemed like it was focused more on the individual and less on society. This in some ways goes against Durkheim's view of society and how it affects religion. However, totem is present in Zen, and the totem being the Buddha. The totem Buddha, bowing, and the Zendo all seem to be very sacred symbols to Soto Zen. As I mentioned before, there are many times when one bows one or more times. I believe this serves as both a symbol of respect and also as a form of communication, as it was often used in place of a greeting or questions and answers. There were many things that appeared sacred. One way I was able to tell this was because it was bowed to. The Zendo had a specific ritual to enter it. The altar, where Buddha's statue sat, the bell and the incense were all placed, was bowed to multiple times. We even bowed to our cushions. I also believe the tea ceremony may be sacred, as it was performed in silence and contained many bows. After my visit, I had a few questions, and so I interviewed Selby, who also attended the meditation, hoping she might have further insight. I also feel that any further questions may be answered via research or by attending another meditation, as Marie and the other members seemed fully open and willing to answer any questions. My main question is regarding symbols, and exactly what this religion views as a totem or as sacred. I also am curious about when one learns more about the history, and if there is a sacred text which holds this information. Finally, I am also curious to see what another outsider's opinions are. What did you expect going into the meditation, and how was what you actually experienced different from what you were expecting?
Being told it was a Zen meditation, I expected there to be a room full of monks and people seated upon rows, but it was complete opposite. It was a room full of people chatting and informing us of what we were going to be experiencing, and it was actually really awesome.
Cool. From what you saw, what symbols or items would you assume to be important or sacred to this practice?
Well, I know that the circle that we sat in is a very sacred position that they do. The Buddha and the incense are kept upon a table in the center of the circle, and also the timing is done with a sacred bell or bowl, which is only used during meditation.
Okay. Do you have any advice or tips for what to expect for someone attending meditation for the first time?
Advice is your legs are going to hurt because you are sitting in cross-legged with your knees touching the ground and perched on top of a pillow. So a tip would be maybe stretch before, and also if you're really going to attend this, to do some research so that you respect the religion and don't step out of boundaries with them.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Attending a Zen meditation as an outsider was a very unique and exciting experience. I honestly feel I had very little, if any, bias, as I knew nothing about Zen or meditation. I also didn't really have any expectations either, other than maybe I was imagining a room much bigger. Therefore, my expectations were not necessarily met. However, I really enjoyed being a part of this practice. The people I met all seemed very kind and caring, and through the night I experienced an overall feeling of calmness and peacefulness. This left me with a really good, positive impression of both the religion and those who follow it. Because of my visit to Calgary Soto Zen, I can honestly say I have a really big appreciation for Zen and meditation.